I absolutely love sewing trousers. Really, I do. In my relatively brief time sewing, I think at least half of what I've sewn has been some form of trouser or another. Such an essential garment. So simple and yet so diverse. Whoever invented them, quite frankly, was a genius. One tube per leg? Luxury. And finally, a proper secure covering for those pesky private parts. Doing a favour for human modesty that is, frankly, too generous to repay. Now, I've grumbled in a lot of other videos already about the challenges that my physique presents to achieving a well-fitting trouser. And yes, as far as terminology is concerned, I am going to stick with trousers and not pants. I'm no snob for British English, but I'm just not quite ready to say pants just yet. Anyway, I don't want to keep mentioning it. Flat, short, tushy, forward-jutting hips, and knees which, if they aren't actually knocked, seem to become so on account of the way they lock when I'm standing. Thanks again to those hips and the posture they create. Knock knees being, in case you don't know, when your knees sort of angle inwards, creating a kind of X shape. The opposite being bow legs, where the knees rather angle outwards, creating more like a O shape. Imagine those are the feet. But there's no need to get so technical for now. Now, the way shop-bought trousers fit me, or rather didn't fit me, in light of these idiosyncrasies, is one of the main reasons why I started to sew in the first place. And I promise that's the last time I'm going to make that point on video. But once I had started sewing, I did become somewhat obsessed with creating the perfect trouser pattern. Perhaps you've had a similar experience with some sewing problem or another. You'll be out and about in the big wide world just walking right into people because you're too busy trying to crack the code of your crotch measurement. Or trying to recall, for the love of all that is holy, just how exactly you sew a fly zipper. I had mixed success. With each trouser, I worked out something new and got a bit closer to the ideal. And since it usually just involved shortening something, I often was able to take in the ones that I'd already made and catch them up on my masterful innovations. But despite all this, still never quite got there. Boo-hoo-hoo, woe is me. A well-fitting trouser really is a sight to behold. A well-fitting trouser well exemplifies, I think, the material beauty, if that's a fair way to put it, of garments and fabrics. You know, the way they behave as objects. Now, that's something I really only started thinking about the more I sewed. When everything fits right, the wearer enjoys perfect comfort and maneuverability. Almost all creases just disappear, and the leg falls unobstructed to the floor, allowing the fabric to express itself in conversation with the human body that it's covering. And yet, when you think about how weird that body is from the waist down, you know, geometrically speaking, it's almost hard to understand how such a perfect fit is even possible to achieve. Only, we know that it is. And so, like Captain Ahab barreling around the world after Moby Dick, or, if you prefer, like the proverbial dog chasing its proverbial tail, we lapse into obsession, and we muck about trying to do things that it takes professional tailors, designers, people like that, years to learn and lifetimes to perfect. So here I am, rolling the dice once more. Now, the pattern that I'm using to make these trousers is the same one that I used to make the trousers for my wedding suit, only we all know how they turned out. This time, for sanity's sake, I'm leaving out some of the frills like hooks and bars and side tabs, and I'm going to make this as a bit of a more casual garment. Anyway, to the pattern I made a series of alterations, mostly raising the waistline and lengthening the crotch, and undoing a couple of bizarre improvisational flourishes that are too ridiculous really to mention again. So I made myself a toile, full of hope that somehow I would get it right first time. I say first time, obviously this is like the 18th draft, but you know what I mean. And while it certainly was an improvement, the pleats lay a little more gently, and I was no longer giving myself the most excruciating wedgie in the history of genitalia, but there were, nevertheless, further modifications to make. Now, I'd already made one toile, and being a lazy little rotter, I didn't really feel like doing it again. Instead, I'm just going for it, which is to say that what you're watching here is a rather presumptuous endeavour, to say the least. What's more, my fabric choice, as it so often is perhaps a little suspect as well. Now, this is a really lovely marine cotton flannel, which I naturally picked up a suit's worth of a few months ago. The only thing is, the more that I handle it, the more I realise it was obviously made as a sort of mid-weight shirting. Which is to say that even if the fit is magically correct, I'm going to end up with something less like elegant day wear, most likely, and more like pyjama bottoms. But it's the 21st century and we try not to worry about such distinctions anymore. So I'm calling it now. If these bad boys do fit, you're gonna need 100 men, or perhaps just one gorilla, to prize them off me. Beyond just the emotional highs of this psychodrama, however, this cyclical, quixotic quest for the pattern of my dreams, I find there's always a ton of fun to be had in just the sewing of trousers in the first place. Once you got all of the steps pinned down, you can pretty easily crank out a pair in a day. And what's more, I'd say there's probably nothing especially difficult in the sewing, other than that fly zipper from earlier. And while that is, of course, a rather Byzantine process, it's not remotely as upsetting as setting the sleeves on a suit jacket, for instance. A process which I can only discuss in hushed, traumatised tones. Nah, with trousers, there's a nice arc to it. You do the pockets, easy enough, and then you're onto the zipper nice and early, getting it out of the way. And then from there, it's a pretty leisurely downhill cruise, culminating in the usual flurry of buttons and their holes, and of hems which, in my case at least, usually need resetting at the earliest opportunity. Until you arrive at this crucial juncture, ready to learn, no doubt, that your pattern is as botched as it ever was. Well, pyjamas wasn't very far off, was it? Sewing-wise, the zipper is a little bit sketchy and I'm definitely going to have to reposition that button, but I am very pleased about this pocket. Vis-a-vis the pattern, certainly a few significant steps forward. I was probably a little bit over-optimistic about the waistband measurement, but at least that means I'm surely not going to miss those belt loops that I forgot to attach. The crotch situation is much improved also, although I'll definitely throw just one last smidge of length along the seat seam, I think. And these pleats. They're not pulling open like the last trouser, and I do think they probably would lie flat if I were to press them, only I can't, can I? Have you noticed yet? The sewing gods alone will know how I've managed to do this. All I can say is, what on earth has happened here? Certainly a little bit of waistband surgery is going to be in order. Good news, I suppose, for those missing belt loops. Oi, oi, oi. I love sewing trousers.